as we talked about a little bit in the session today, how automatic thoughts can really influence how we're feeling and our behaviors that we go through. So I wanted to show you this worksheet that we have. It's your daily thought record, and we can go over how it's used and then maybe talk about you using it throughout the week as homework, if that's okay?
Okay.
All right. So first, before we start, you'll write down this so I can actually give you the time because you'll be doing the writing now. And don't worry about grammar or spelling, anything like that. It doesn't matter. And then also don't stress about any mistakes because that's okay. You'll probably make mistakes, which is actually good because then you can learn from them. So that's all right. And then we'll go through this now and we can talk about what you thought it was like and maybe what you liked, what you didn't like, and using it for homework this week.
Okay.
All right. So the directions to this is the next one. So when you notice your mood starting to change, when you start feeling down or upset about something, you're supposed to jot down what's going on and your thoughts that you're having on this so you can work through those thoughts. And the first step that you'll do, all the directions are up here, but the first thing is you'll write down when it happened. Do you have a thought right now that you thought maybe we could go through?
Well, I'm just feeling really sort of upset about I've just been really down this week about school and, you know, I'm not getting the grades that I expected and I just feel like nothing I do is right or good anymore.
It's a lot of pressure. So we could talk about how, you know, nothing I do is good or like that was a thought you just said. Do you remember the last time you had that thought or did you want to focus in on it right now as a thought you had now?
I thought I had now.
Okay. So if you want to write down today, the date and the time, the 19th, and right now it's 2 o'clock, exactly.
So I just write down my thought here.
Yeah, so right here you're going to write down the situation. So what's going on when you had that thought? What are you thinking about? What are you doing? So when you're writing a paper, you're feeling like it's just not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you're going through that, what's the automatic thought? What's the first thing that pops into your head?
While I'm writing the paper? Just that nothing, it's just like not, every time I like read through and read through and read through, it's just never going to be good enough.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so why don't you write down this right here, nothing's going to be good enough or it'll never be good enough. And so on a scale of 0 to 100, how much do you believe that thought? How much do you believe it's not good enough?
Maybe like 80.
Okay. All right. Why don't you jot that down?
Right here?
Yep, right underneath it. That's perfect. Okay. So when you're feeling that way and you're thinking like that, how does it make you feel? What are the emotions that you're experiencing?
A lot of anxiety. Like I feel like if I don't do well enough, my parents are going to be really disappointed in me. So there's just like so much pressure to make it perfect and make it like, you know, 100%. And I just, because I feel like I'm just going to let everybody down.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, that is a lot of pressure and it's a lot to take on and a lot to think about when, you know, you're just writing your paper. Why don't you write down, if it's okay with you, if this is what you feel, anxiety like you talked about and maybe pressure.
Under here?
Yep, right under there. These are your emotions. In this column, you'll talk about the emotions that you feel after you experience an automatic thought. Okay. And then how much do you feel anxious? Like what percentage would you say you're feeling anxious?
Out of 100? Probably like 70%.
Okay.
Anxiety.
Okay. Do you want to write that next to anxiety or anywhere? And then how much pressure would you say you're feeling? What percentage feels like pressure?
It's probably like 100.
Okay.
I would say. Like a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Okay. So now in this next section, the adaptive response, I just want you to think about, I'm going to ask you a few questions to kind of prompt you about your automatic thoughts so we can evaluate what's really going on and if it's really true. So what's the evidence that your paper's not going to be good enough, that just won't be?
I don't think I have any evidence.
Okay. No, you can't think of anything that would lead you to believe that it's not.
No, and that's what's really confusing, because I actually do fairly well in school, but I just feel like every time I do it, it like has to be perfect.
Yeah.
So I don't really know why I would even feel that way.
Okay. And I heard you already identify what I was going to ask you next time. You said you always do fairly well, so that's evidence against, it not being good enough.
Mm.
Yeah.
It is.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I hope, that you could maybe see that connection that you said to me. I just picked that up from what you talked about.
Mm.
Yeah, so just something to think about, but then also, say it wasn't good enough. What would be the worst thing that could happen?
I would fail.
Mm-hmm.
I would fail. Just
fail the paper?
Fail the paper.
Okay. And how would you cope with failing the paper?
Maybe I could, next time around, I could think more about putting more effort into the next paper or the next assignment instead of letting it totally derail me.
Yeah.
Because I do find sometimes if I don't do well, that it totally just overwhelms me, and then I have trouble staying on track for the next assignment because it's really discouraging for me.
Yeah, so it doesn't end when you get that grade. It kind of starts the next cycle, and you're worried until you get to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so that can be difficult. So what would be the best possible outcome?
I do very well on it, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah. And how would that feel if that was?
Awesome. It would feel great. And I think it would boost my confidence for the next assignment.
Yeah, so that same pattern you were just talking about, if you do bad, it's going to influence the next paper that you do, but if you do well, it's also going to, but it'll be more positive.
True. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think the reality, what would really happen with your paper? Do you think that it'll really turn out good? It may really turn out bad?
I think it'll probably turn out good.
Okay.
I think so. I think I just like to think that it's not going to be good enough because then I don't get disappointed if it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. That can definitely be true for a lot of people. It kind of helps you prepare for what might happen or,
right.
things like that. Okay. And then if your friend was in this situation, what do you think that you would tell your friend? If they came to you and they're like, I'm writing this paper, it's just never going to be good enough, and you talk to them about what the worst outcome was, how they normally do, how would you guide your friend?
I would probably remind them that they always do well and that they're just always really hard on themselves and to, take a step back and to just, have a little bit more self-confidence. Know that it's not the end of the world if you don't do your best, but you should at least try for your best, and that it will probably turn out fine because you always do fine.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. I think that would be comforting for your friend to hear, definitely. So after considering that, this would be the outcome, a final box. So how likely are you to believe this thought now after going through all those different scenarios?
Well, not very much. I don't think it's as powerful when you kind of think about how I typically do and what the worst case scenario is. It kind of alleviates the pressure for me a lot.
Good.
I don't feel like it's that big of a deal if I don't do perfect and that it's not going to be the end of the world. So I do feel a lot better about it now.
Okay. Do you want to write down you feel better? Could you say how much better you feel out of 0 to 100? How likely are you to believe that, it's not going to be good enough?
A lot less. So I would say maybe 30.
Okay.
Probably at a 30 now.
Yeah, that's great. And like you said, that pressure kind of helps you work towards your paper, and it helps you feel better about, preparing for if it's not perfect. So maybe it's good that you didn't go all the way down to 0, and think that 30 is a good number because it can still give you that motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after going through this, what are you thinking about using this possibly?
I really like this. I really like this because I feel like it forces you to think through a situation instead of just acting purely on emotion. You kind of have to actually rationalize and think about, and I think maybe over time, will this become automatic for me?
Yeah.
If I do it enough?
It might, yeah, it definitely might, because if you're constantly using it and working through in your head, it'll just become like secondhand. So just, think about it through as you're going.
Yeah, I really like this, and I think that I could definitely use this when I'm struggling with something, or if I'm feeling anxious or depressed.
Good.
To maybe write it down and then read through it again and then see how I feel afterward.
I think that's great. Are there things that you don't like about it that maybe you'd want to adjust?
No, I don't really think so. I think it's a matter of, I think what I really like about it is writing it down. But in terms of anything I don't like, I think it'll be hard to come up with thinking about why it might be a false belief.
Yeah.
Just because when you're in that moment of really feeling sort of anxious or depressed, it's hard to kind of rationalize why it's a false belief.
Yeah.
But I think with practice, it'll probably become much easier.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and that's something that we can talk about in the next couple sessions. So if you want to do this week for homework, then we can definitely come back together next week and talk about different things and see how it was to do it on your own, and if it still was really difficult to kind of work through that automatic thought and to evaluate it and see how it feels.
Okay.
All right?
That sounds great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.